welcome back to Pauline's Pop Culture Corner. I'm Pauline, and today we're going to take a look at the top 10 movies from the year I turned 10, which is 1989. Movies are a huge part of our lives. The right movie at the right time can be life-changing and inspirational. They can give comfort in times of need, insight into the lives lived by others, and also, of course, entertainment. In an instant, a quote or a scene from a movie can bring you back to where you were when you first saw it, which could be a first date, a slumber party at the drive-in. I know that a couple of movies that always give me really good memories are from when me and my husband first started dating, and those are There's Something About Mary and Practical Magic. And every time I watch those, I still get those memories and those great feelings. We also all have milestone years that we can look back on, hopefully with fond memories. So let's look at the top 10 movies from when I was 10, and that was one of my milestone years. At number 1, the top grossing movie of the year, we have Batman. This is one of the 2 movies that was directed by Tim Burton and starred Michael Keaton as the Caped Crusader. Now, I know that when I first heard that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman, I thought, Mr. Mom is going to be Batman? But he was great. He was a great Bruce Wayne. He was a great Batman. It just worked. And to say that this movie was highly anticipated by me and all my little 10-year-old friends would be an understatement. And part of that was the fact that there were just so many types of merchandise out. And as a kid, I remember that was the movie that I really remember had like an all-out media blitz. And so it just kind of created even more and more hype. There was another movie at the time, around that time, that had the same type of media blitz but didn't do as well, which was Dick Tracy with Warren Beatty. So you could kind of see where it helped Batman, but it kind of hurt Dick Tracy because there was all this hype that the movie didn't live up to. The other great thing about the movie is that it was the first superhero / comic book movie that we had in a really long time. I think since Christopher Reeves' Superman in the 80s. And this movie had more of that brooding, atmospheric look than we were used to. And it was a little grittier, but still fun than the Adam West TV show from the 60s, which was a lot campier and had bright colors and things like that. So this movie in 1989 made $251 million, which was huge at the time. And it, in today's dollars, I don't even know what that would be, but it's still, it was a very well-performing movie, which is the reason why it had sequels. In the number 2 spot, we have Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. In this installment of our favorite archaeologist adventurer, we have Indiana Jones teaming up with his father, Professor Henry Jones, on an adventure to try and find the Holy Grail before the Nazis can get to it and use it for their nefarious and evil plans. This was a really fun movie, and it was full of the spirit we always loved with the Indiana Jones movies. And being released in May of 1989, it grossed $197 million, which, again, meant sequels, which we've loved most of them since. In the number 3 spot was Lethal Weapon 2. This was the first Lethal Weapon movie I ever saw, and I probably saw it at way too young of an age. I kind of didn't understand a lot of it. But in this movie, we have Mel Gibson as the loose cannon cop and his long-suffering partner, played by Danny Glover, named Murtaugh. And they were taking on murderous South African diplomats that were taking advantage of their immunity status to commit crimes and just run amok in Los Angeles. This is also the introduction of the character Leo Getz, played by Joe Pesci, who I always loved that character. What Leo wants, Leo gets. That was his famous line in that movie. This movie made $147 million at the box office, and again, sequels. See, you guys, sequels and franchises aren't just a 2000s thing. They've been doing it for a long time. The movie that came in at number 4 for the year of 1989 was Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And being 10 years old when this movie came out, it was perfect for me. I loved it. The idea of shrinking down to smaller than the size of an ant, and seeing all of the oversized common items around the house, it was just so much fun. And in the movie, it stars Rick Moranis as a scientist who accidentally shrinks down his teen daughter and young son and the two neighbor boys. And when that happens, they get swept out into the backyard, literally swept out by a gigantic broom, because they're microscopic size. Nobody can see them. Nobody else knows what happened. So once they're in the backyard, their goal is to make it back into the house to get help to become normal size again. If they could have tailored a movie script to 10-year-old me, it would have been this movie. I just always loved it. And it's a movie that I watched over and over again. You know, back in the day when you had, a limited number of VHS tapes, this was one of them that would regularly find its way into the VCR. Plus, I always was a little bit jealous of Amy, the teen daughter, because I had a bit of a crush on Rusty, the neighbor boy from next door. The movie did so well with families and little kids that it made a box office of $130 million and sequels. So right in the middle of the list, we've got Look Who's Talking. Now I'm going to say, this movie on paper, it sounds insane. You have Kirstie Alley as a single pregnant woman who is pregnant with her married lover's child, who is voiced by Bruce Willis, because why wouldn't he be? John Travolta is the taxi driver for Kirstie Alley when she goes into labor. And at the hospital, he's mistaken for the father. So they usher him into the delivery room, so he's there for the birth of the child. And after that, they just kind of become enmeshed in each other's lives. Hijinks ensue, and they end up together. It's an entertaining movie. I watched it multiple times, especially since they used to, for some reason, have it in heavy rotation on, I think it was TBS, the TBS channel. But in my opinion, there are a lot of movies outside of the top 10 for 1989 that were objectively better movies. But the movie did make enough money at $140 million to warrant sequels. And in one of those sequels, you actually hear the inner thoughts of their dogs. So I think by that time, the idea had kind of run its course and it thankfully ended. This was also, keep in mind, before Quentin Tarantino and Pulp Fiction resuscitated John Travolta's career. Ghostbusters 2 came in at number 6, bringing in $112 million. And this sequel to the much-loved movie, it saw the aftermath of the events from the first movie and how they dealt with it and how they dealt with the fallout. So in the movie, after discovering a literal river of ooze and slime under the streets of New York City, the team comes back together to figure out how to battle this hostile slime, because it takes on the feelings of the people around them. It's sentient. It takes on the feelings of the New Yorkers around them. So hence it's hostile. So with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, and Sigourney Weaver reprising their roles, this was a fun movie that captured a lot of the charm of the first one. I always loved the thought of Vigo the Carpathian, a painting, needing a child to be, in order for him to be reborn. And then the sentient slime taking on the feelings of the city and becoming hostile. These premises were very weird, but they worked. Of course, it was a paranormal, supernatural movie, so that also helps with mitigating the weirdness. At number 7 is Back to the Future Part 2. Grossing $103 million at the box office, this was the much waited for sequel to the first Back to the Future movie, which ended with To Be Continued. This was one of the hands down greatest set of movies of my childhood. Loved it, loved it, loved it. It was a slumber party staple as a kid, definitely the first one. And in this movie, we have Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, Doc Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, and Jennifer, played by Elizabeth Shue, traveling to the future of 2015, which, do any of you feel old realizing that they went to the future in 2015? But anyways, I digress. In 2015, they see how Marty and Jennifer's kids turn out, and they're also trying to avoid their future selves to eliminate the confusion of time travel, which time travel movies, you definitely have to suspend your disbelief, because if I think about how time travel movies work for too long, I feel like there's smoke coming out of my ears and I just really don't understand it. But anyways, so when they're in the future, Biff, the villain of the trilogy, gets his hands on, on a sports almanac that Marty has brought back to the past from the future. So in the future, Marty buys this sports almanac, brings it back to the past. Biff gets his hands on it, and then Marty is traveling back to 1959, to 1985, to 2015 to kind of fix the damage done by Biff getting this sports almanac and betting and winning all this money on the outcomes of these games. Love this movie. Was not surprised when they made a third one. And that one was set in the Old West. So if you haven't, I don't know anybody who hasn't seen these movies, but if you haven't seen those movies, like I said, some of my favorite movies of all time from my childhood, go check them out. So the next movie, which is at number 8 on the list, is Parenthood. And I'm not going to lie, as a kid watching this movie, a lot of it went over my head. I didn't understand a lot of it. But then rewatching it later as a teen, it scared me and made me never want to have kids. And as an adult and parent, I find myself watching it and just kind of nodding in sympathy. So in this movie, Steve Martin, Mary Steenburgen, Diane Wiest, and Jason Robards and their extended family struggle with parenting and maintaining their relationships with each other and with their kids and their siblings, and just in general trying to make their way through life, the normal struggles that we all have. There are some funny moments, there are some sad moments, and there's an overall sense of the human condition, what it is to be a person living in modern times, trying to make families in all their different iterations work. And if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. It's one of those movies where you're laughing one minute, you're crying the next. It's a great movie. And with ticket sales of over $100 million, the movie made enough money that decades later, they made it into a TV series that did pretty well and was on air for quite a few years. So this next movie is Dead Poets Society. At number 9, it was the first movie I can remember with Robin Williams in a serious role. And the movie is it's touching on so many levels. And at $95 million, it showed that Robin Williams could do drama as well as he could do comedy. Even though the movie came out when I was a kid, I didn't see it, and I had never even heard of it until I was 17 years old and I was in English class in high school, and we watched it in class. And I think that was great for me. That was a benefit for me because I was the same age as the students that were in the movie. In the movie, Robin Williams plays an English teacher at an upper class all-boys boarding school in the late 1950s. He was there obviously as a teacher, but also his role in the movie and in the story was to inspire them to break out of the roles that they've kind of been boxed into by their status and by what was expected of them. The students, played by Robert Sean Leonard, Ethan Hawke, Josh Charles, and others, they learned the meaning of self-expression and the real meaning of carpe diem, or seize the day. As 17-year-old students at the time of watching the movie, this film inspired myself and my classmates to the point that we wrote and published our class poetry book that year, greatly inspired by the spirit of the movie and inspired by that idea of carpe diem and what it means to literally seize the day and live for the moment and not just do what you're expected to do. This will always be one of my favorite movies. Rounding out the list at number 10 is another really great movie. We have When Harry Met Sally. So this movie is one of the very first romantic comedies that I remember watching and just loving. And making $92 million, it showed that these romantic comedies could be profitable as well. And so, of course, after When Harry Met Sally, there's just a ton of these movies that were coming out, like Sleepless in Seattle, you've got Mail, all those kinds of movies that are now kind of seen as like chick flicks. The first one that I saw was When Harry Met Sally. So it starred Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan as two people meeting and losing each other over the years and finally coming together again after they've each lost a long-term serious relationship. Billy Crystal's character, Harry, gets divorced. Meg Ryan breaks up with her long-term boyfriend. And they come together to try and navigate the endings of these relationships and stepping into the dating scene after so many years with the same person. Co-starring the wonderful Carrie Fisher and Bruno Kirby, the movie is fun, funny, and it's real in the emotions. The fear of being alone, the fear of, the unknown, of getting older, all of those things, of trying to find the right person in your life, while still being true to who you are. It's definitely one of my favorite movies, with one of my favorite soundtracks ever by Harry Connick Jr. And although it's not technically billed as a holiday movie, because there's holiday scenes, there's a few Christmas scenes, depicted over the years, and New Year's scenes, I always see it as a Christmas movie. So I watch it in that time, that time of year every year, or listen to, Harry Connick Jr.'s soundtrack around that time of year. And it's definitely a feel-good movie for me. The list for 1989 has a lot of movies I would consider having stood the test of time. And in looking at the list, the interesting thing about it is that 4 of the movies are sequels, 3 are the first in a franchise, and only 3 were standalone movies. And the 3 standalone movies were Parenthood, that ended up getting a TV show, Dead Poets Society, and When Harry Met Sally. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That's a pretty solid list for 1 year. The top 10, all of them, are probably movies that y'all have seen. So let me know in the comments which one of them you've seen, which ones you liked, which ones you don't, which ones you haven't seen and are planning to watch. Also, what were the top movies from when you were 10? Were any of them classics? If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you next time. Bye!